Good afternoon. Welcome to the press conference. Mrs. Carrie Lam, the Chief Executive, and government officials will give addresses and to be followed by questions and answers. We're still in the middle of a pandemic, so please observe social distancing. Mrs. Carrie Lam. Friends from the media, fellow citizens, welcome to the press briefing. Last week, when I announced the tightening of social distancing measures, I said that because of the rapid transmission of Omicron, while we imposed a 2-week period of the tightened social distancing measures, we'd like to give you an account of the situation after 7 days, i.e. 1 month, and also after 1 week, and what we're going to do after the 2 week. Now we are on the 8th day, and we have an idea of what happened in the past 7 days. So I'm going to give you an account of these measures, and to support industries directly affected by the social distancing measures, premises and closed down because of these measures, and a ban on evening dine-in. I'm going to introduce anti-epidemic fund 5.0 to give them some support. Now today is the 4th. Now this is January, exactly 2 years in our fight against the pandemic. I'd like to say that we have been rather successful in the past 2 years. From this chart, you can see several waves of outbreak. People described that we're currently in the 5th wave. By and large, the outbreak is under control. In particular, for a long time, the red line, which represents local cases, have been rather flat. That is, we have got very few, or if not zero, local infection cases. Compared with other parts of the world, we have done quite well. We have a total number of 13,025 cases. So among 170 countries, we are below them. Now, for every million population, we have only got 1,000 odd cases and 28 deaths per million. So we only account for about 4% of the total number of cases in the world. Now, because Omicron is highly transmissive and it has replaced Delta as the major variant now, so we must not let off our guard. And the first imported case was only published by the Center for Health Protection on the 30th of December, the so-called Moon Palace case. And it was the first unlinked case, local case. It happened to a surveyor in Two Moon. On his way to work, he passed Victoria Park to North Point, and we were worried that he got infected from the dense cluster. That took place on the 4th of January. He was tested preliminary positive, and on the 5th of January, it became a confirmed case. The CHP, because could not identify the source, classified it as an unlinked case. Fortunately, after epidemiological investigation, it was found to be linked to the Six Garden restaurant cluster. So it was an imported link case. Now, it's now time to sum up what has happened in the past week. Now, because we have the circuit-breaking measures and other measures, so from 180 cases per week, we fell to 141 imported cases in the past week. Now, we've only got 200 odd arriving passengers on a daily basis at our airport. Obviously, the number of imported cases would drop correspondingly. Meanwhile, import-linked cases with epidemiological links grew in the past week. From 17 in the past week, it grew to 42 cases. And just now, Dr. Zhang Chukwan gave you a briefing, and the route of transmission of a goods handler in supermarkets was yet to be identified. We could not find the route of transmission, although genome sequencing told us it was linked to the female flight attendant. Because we have yet to identify the route of transmission, there is cause for concern. To tackle the outbreak of Omicron in the community, we have done a lot in the past week. So far, we have done over 1.1 million nucleic acid tests. How are we able to achieve that? We have got 460 locations involved in compulsory testing notices. These are places confirmed cases have been to. And we have also done 30 rounds of restricted testing in 30 residential buildings of confirmed cases. And over 90,000 members of the public have received notification through the Leave Home Safe app. They are to be tested at testing centers. And for residents in Tuen Mun, so long as they are willing, they can come forward to be tested. They don't have to worry whether they are subject to a CTN or RTD or not. Of course, we have stepped up contact tracing with over 30 staff members working in our office. Most of them are from the disciplined services, and over 4,700 persons have been arranged to go into our quarantine center. Now, we have done so many nucleic acid tests, and many members are subject to compulsory testing. They have encountered some unpleasant experiences, and some had to wait for a long time. On behalf of the SL government, I apologize to them. I ask for their understanding. We have to raise with time. In this very short period, we have mobilized a lot of manpower, and yet we are not able to satisfy everybody. Meanwhile, I have to thank our colleagues working at our airport, at our quarantine center, colleagues from the civil aid services, and also testing contractors. They have worked very hard to collaborate with us. Now, to fight the outbreak of Omicron, apart from what I just announced, we have also announced a number of measures that are expeditious and sharp and focused. Now, we have suspended flights from 8 high-risk places. So we announced a measure on the 5th, and it came into effect on the 8th of January. And then starting from the 7th of January, we have drastically tightened social distancing measures. And then on the 11th, I announced that starting from today, that is the 14th, primary schools, kindergartens, childcare centers, and KG childcare centers will suspend face-to-face classes. In fact, many KGs and CCCs are suspended face-to-face lessons on the 11th when I announced the measure. As of today, all have stopped face-to-face classes. So what have we achieved? We have got 59 import-linked cases. At least 29 of them are Omicron related. Some could not be tested, perhaps because of the genome sequencing. Dr. Lam can supplement later. We've got only one local case, which is yet unlinked, and that is the goods handler at supermarkets. So far, we have yet to see a major outbreak, which is seen in other places. Once Omicron has made its way into the community, the number of cases would grow geometrically. So in the past few weeks, we haven't seen any thing happening like this, and I think this is a good sign. And then the person concerned was already put under quarantine, and the virus was identified. when the patient is under quarantine. So we've been able to place people carrying the virus under quarantine, so they're not able to move around freely in the community. So for cases where genome sequencing has completed, they were all found to have connected to 2 important cases involving flight attendants. So we have got some focused and expeditious and bold measures, and we're able to see from octopus transactions that we have seen reduce the mobility in the community, and this is what we want to achieve.
But the latest assessment is the COVID is not yet under control. There is still a risk of an outbreak. I learned from the press conference that the CHP also said likewise it's premature to say that the COVID has been brought under control. I'd like to now take you through some of these, and the Director of Health will be going into further details. First, when Omicron cropped up, there were 2 cases of possible vertical transmission. Second, there are 2 clusters, and obviously there is more than 1 super spreader. There are many confirmed cases that have not been inoculated. We've seen within a fortnight's time 6 generations of transmission. There are some confirmed patients who have had symptoms for quite some time, and they hadn't sought medical attention, and they were roaming around in the community, and we may have silent chains of transmission in the community. That's why we try to conduct testing in Tuen Mun district, because this person probably roamed around in Tuen Mun. The other phenomenon is from the hospital authority. For those who have admitted to the hospital, only 30% of the infected cases displayed no symptoms. This is not consistent with overseas experience. From overseas experience, a lot of people are asymptomatic, those suffering from Omicron. The 70% of the Omicron patients in Hong Kong do display symptoms. We're worried that there may be asymptomatic Omicron carriers who are still in our midst in the community. So our assessment on this basis that there is still a risk of an outbreak. So today I'm going to be announcing a whole series of measures. The first one, beg your pardon, from 7th to 20th of January, all these measures would have to be extended by another fortnight to the 3rd of February, 3rd day of the Lunar New Year. I am aware that this will let a lot of people down, because this is spanning over the Lunar New Year holidays. People might expect to have a comfortable, a warm family gathering. This may not be happening, and some large-scale events will have to be cancelled, like the New Year fair, and also some of the spring events organized by the Trade Development Board will have to be cancelled. Also, we need to stamp out imported cases to minimize the burden on the hospitals, and the circuit breaker system for flights will be extended to the 4th of February by another 14 days. Now, the COVID situation in these jurisdictions is still severe, so we have to adopt these measures. After the Lunar New Year, after these, the end of these social distancing measures, that's on the 4th day of the Lunar New Year, unless the COVID situation has taken a turn for the worse, or unless there is an outbreak, we are going to be progressively relaxing the restrictions for the premises. There will not be any prolonged restriction. Now, when these businesses are up and running again, like the beauty industry, then we will have to bring in the vaccine bubble. In other words, I made the announcement on the 24th of February, and these originally people needed to have vaccination to gain access to these premises. We have to advance or bring forward these measures. And also, we are going to be launching the AEF 5.0, like the COVID measures, or social distancing measures. We'd like to make it quick. On the 7th of January, we have tightened up the social distancing measures. Today, 14th of January, a week on, we are able to announce and roll out all these measures. Compared with the previous rounds, I mean, there was a gap of 2 months for the third round and a gap of 1 month for the fourth round. So this time, we are making things happening very, very quick. And today is Friday. Next week, we will be accepting applications, and we would seek to disperse the funding in the early part of the Lunar New Year, if not earlier. The total commitment will be $3.57 billion. In the AEF, we still have a $4.5 or $4.4 billion plus. We need to reserve some funding for the remaining payment, so we can actually activate the fifth round of the AEF without going through electrical. This is as far as we can manage. Now, certainly this will be targeted. We basically target at 2 areas. First, there are premises and people that have been affected by the first round of social distancing measures. And the premises include the food establishments, there will be no nighttime dining, beauty parlors have to be closed, fitness centers, and also the sports coaches and arts practitioners, because of the closure of the premises, they are not able to engage in these activities. The second area is they've never seen any recovery. That's because Hong Kong is not able to reopen the border, and they have been in deep freeze for a long time, and they include the cross-boundary passenger sector and the tourism sector. Now, for eligible premises and individuals, we will be basing on the fourth round. We will be adopting a streamlined approach. That will make things happen very fast, because if we have to redo the criteria for the premises, it will take a pretty long time. So we will be working on the basis of the fourth round of the AEF in terms of eligibility. Now, for the funding subsidy level, I announced an additional 14 days, and the total restriction measures will be 28 days. And in the third round, they will have to bear 44 to 65 days. And for the fourth round, between 57 to and 158 days. So we have to bear in mind this period of restrictions. So this 4 week of restriction, we will be working on the basis of the fourth round. In terms of the funding, we will offer half of that amount. If they are affected, then it would be half of the fourth round for premises, or 2/3 for individuals. Now, let's say the catering premises, we work on the basis of the the size of the licensed premises. There are 5 tiers. If they do have the liquor license, there would be additional subsidy. So for these catering premises less than 100 square meters, the one-off subsidy would be $50,000. More than 100 square meters and under 200, it would be $100,000, and so on and so forth. I don't think I can be exhaustive with regard to the precise details, but right after this press conference, we will be issuing a press release, and you will get to see the level of subsidy for individual categories. Also, we've closed some premises, and there will be some subsidies from the LWB, and this is targeting at the suspension of the in-person classes for the childcare centers and the interest classes and the instructors there. In terms of education, there are some institutions and people who are affected by the suspension of face-to-face classes, like 1,000 or so kindergartens in Hong Kong. They will be entitled to some subsidy. There are some primary schools that have been closed. There are some school bus drivers who are affected. Again, we will offer them some subsidy. Now, for the CEDB measures, they haven't seen any recovery. As I said, mainly we're talking about the tourism sector, the travel agents.
Measures under the Transparent Housing Bureau will be to support industries that cannot operate at all, those supporting flight services and cross-boundary coaches, ferries, and high cars. Last year we didn't cancelled the New Year Fair and also the Dine and Wine Festival or Carnival, and we have measures to help them. So for the Dine and Wine Carnival, we refund the rental, and on top of that we give 50% on top of that as well. So it will be a refund plus another 50% of what was paid to the government, and that was for the New Year market, and for the food and wine festival. There are similar arrangements. Meanwhile, we will continue to enhance our testing capacity. Our testing capacity is being maintained at over 100,000 tests per day. We have got community testing centers in all 18 districts. We have mobile testing stations, and recently we have focused our efforts in Tuen Mun. Hopefully, our residents in Tuen Mun can all be tested. As far as I know, there aren't any more queues today, and what we saw a few days ago is now relieved. I encourage all high-risk patients to make good use of our community testing centers and mobile testing stations to help to cut the silent transmission chains in the society. And we should also boost vaccination rate. This time, we tackle the outbreak a little bit differently. Last time, the outbreak was in November 2020, and vaccination only started in February 2021. So now we have both testing and vaccination, and the number of vaccinated is also growing. We have added new vaccination centers, but I won't go into details. Now we are able to give 1.77 doses per month, or 59,000 doses per day. Be able to cope with the much higher demand for the first dose and the booster. We're able to cope with the demand because we are giving 59,000 doses per day. We have boosted our capacity by 75% compared with the start of the month. So we should be able to satisfy the demand for vaccines from the community. Lastly, I'd like to appeal to the public once again. We must fight the virus together. to contain this outbreak caused by Omicron. So I said we will be able to resume travel very soon because we are already and then the main authorities are happy with our arrangements. We're able to have quarantine-free travel. Hopefully, we can together suppress the Omicron transmission so that after a while we'll be able to enjoy quarantine-free travel with the mainland. So please observe personal hygiene, wear your masks, and you should monitor yourself and your family's physical condition. And you should pay attention to location subject to CTN and RODT released by the government. And during festivals, do not have cross-family gatherings. Avoid large crowds. For those who have not been jabbed, please arrange to receive the vaccines ASAP. I pause here, and Dr. Lam, Director of Health, will brief you on his view of the current pandemic situation from the health perspective. Thank you. I'd like to report to you the trend of the pandemic globally. Over 300,000 people have been infected and over 2.54 million lives were lost. Omicron is now the mainstay variant, and as of yesterday, we have 327 Omicron cases in Hong Kong. 295 of them were imported, and for local or import-related local cases amount to 32. And the virus has spread in the community. As said by the chief executive, we have two major clusters, one being the Moon Palace cluster rising from case 1 to 611. So 15 cases are confirmed or positive cases. Another cluster stemmed from the female flight attendant 12676. She's spread the virus to her mother, who spread it in the dance cluster. 44 cases were involved in this cluster. Now, we cannot be too optimistic with regard to the development of the pandemic situation. In the past week, we had about 5 to 8 import-linked cases tested positive per day, whereas in previous waves of outbreak, where before there was an explosive outbreak, there were about 10 days where sporadic cases were found every day. So we must not let down guards at this moment. And as for the transmission in these clusters, you can see the rapid transmission, and many transmission chains resulted in the community. The transmission has taken place in various places and in various modes. Restaurants were Western Chinese restaurants, the Cha Chan Teng or Hong Kong style places, and hot pot shops, and then securities company and security guards and construction workers, activities involve religious activities and social gatherings, etc. And when we have a double-digit number of cases per day, we would start to see vertical transmission in residential buildings, but this has happened very earlier on. Although we are talking about a single digit of cases, but we have Maple Gardens and also Meishan building in Taipo. There have been vertical transmissions in these two buildings. This demonstrates the high transmissibility of the virus. And in tracing close contacts, we encountered difficulties. In one case, there was a part-time worker in Sogo. At first, it was an unlinked case, but after vigorous tracing, it was found that it was a third-generation transmission case, and then it could be traced back to her father, the proprietor of a dispensary, and further tracing revealed that he got it from the male flight attendant case 12611. So we had to start with the third generation and trace it back to the first generation. Meanwhile, there could be some transmissions already taking place in the community, and so it's difficult to trace these cases.
There were cases with no known source of infection. The 58-year-old supermarket goods handler. From the genome sequencing, we could link it to the dance cluster, but it's not clear how the transmission took place. So there is a likelihood that silent chains of transmission still exist. For those who have been infected with Omicron, the analysis also gave us some indications. Now, looking at the 32 cases linked with imported cases, well over 80% show a CT value of less than 30. It means that the viral load is pretty high and the transmissibility is also high. Like the chief executive said a moment ago, if you analyze all these 32 cases, 30% of them were asymptomatic. In the community, the spread might have occurred unawares. So basically, going forward, we still have to face the development with due caution. We are on the verge of a volcano. We still haven't been able to steer clear of the volcano, as it were, because we've seen new cases cropping up on a daily basis. There is still a risk of silent transmission, and Omicron is highly infectious. Only with one silent chain of transmission and only with one super spreader will we see an exponential growth of cases. So to avert the crisis and to avert the situation, I think the whole of Hong Kong do need to observe the following protocol. First, please use the Leave Home Safe app. I mentioned the difficulties, the challenges of tracing the close contacts. And many times they don't have the foggiest idea where they've been and how long they've been at a certain place. And it would take an awful long time for us to identify the details, and we may miss the golden opportunity. So please use the Leave Home Safe app as much as you can. Second, go get the jab. We mentioned the whole family of the dispensary and the flight attendants family. A lot of them have not been inoculated, and that's one of the reasons why transmission occurred, because of the higher viral load. Also, for these locally acquired Omicron cases, the median age is more than 50. People of more advanced ages are more likely to be infected with Omicron. So for senior citizens, we urge them to get a jab as soon as possible. Furthermore, once you get tested as soon as possible, if you've been to certain places, however short the time was, we would urge you to go get tested. If you are feeling discomfort in any way, please seek medical attention We would also like to urge the health vigilant, and they should say the potential sufferers for testing. We have to a mask on. We have to wash our hands regularly, and we should wait as soon as possible. Many of the gatherings saw taking place. So over the Lunar New Year, please into the gatherings as much as possible. I'm sure that and take these measures, we will be able to avert. We cannot take the situation lightly, but we can emerge from this. Now, I throw the floor open for questions. Please identify the organization you work for, and please speak into the microphone. The one at the back, to the right, please. Thank you. RTHK. Now, for the ECF, you mentioned that after the social distancing measures expired, the premises can reopen, subject, of course, to the vaccine bubble. Now, if these premises have to be closed for a longer period of time, would there be additional funding or subsidy for them? The Lunar New Year is supposed to be the busy period. Do you think that they should be offered more subsidy to make up for the losses over the Lunar New Year? It seems that the government doesn't really want to seek further funding from Let's Go for this ECF. Why do you want to just use the remainder of the fund? Why don't you seek more funding from Let's Go to help the businesses? Social distancing measures, is it likely that prior to the third day of the Lunar New Year, if we have seen an ease off of the cases, that you're going to be lifting some of the restrictions? And if these premises were to adopt the vaccine bubble, they can be opened sooner. How much do you think the restrictions can be eased? Right, a whole barrage of questions. First of all, we do not rule out the possibility of, because of the implications of COVID, we do not rule out the possibility of going to Let's Go again. In fact, many Let's Go members made some remarks that they've written to me and also to the CS. We have to make things happen very quickly, and also with the funding in the ECF, we are able to tackle the problem. So we are of the view that we shouldn't wait because we have to prioritize all these premises that are firstly affected. I do not rule out the possibility, to answer your question, if we do need to have further funding. I'm sure the Let's Go members would be very supportive. I'm sure they will be taking the initiative to make some suggestions having regard to the situation. So this is a positive interaction between the executive and the legislature. And as a result of the improvement to the electoral system, the executive and the legislature should be working together. And we have this round of funding. If there is a need, we can certainly discuss with Let's Go. The COVID may not be disappearing in just a couple of days, and we can set our mind at ease. Even if there is an recedence, it may take some time, and hopefully within 14 days we don't have any local cases, then we can take further measures. And we certainly would have an interim review until the expiry, and we're not going to lift the measures yet. I think we have to be determined enough in order to achieve zero COVID, and all these measures are necessary. For the premises, I think we have to spell things out in no uncertain terms. I'm sure if the catering premises would like to resume, that nighttime dining. They will have to do the recruitment and to get the ingredients prepared and so on. And so we will be implementing all these social distancing measures. Now, what is different now is that on the 4th of February, unless we've seen a dramatic worsening of the situation or a large-scale outbreak, barring this happening, we will be reopening the businesses. But they will have to be subject to a vaccine bubble. This is floated by the business, like the catering business or the beauty sector, and they can require the patrons to be vaccinated. And we will be having the vaccine bubble requirement on the 24th of February. If they follow the vaccine bubble measure, and if the patrons are vaccinated, then they will be okay. As to the fifth round of subsidy, now we have $4 billion or so in the fund. We will be taking advantage of this remaining fund in the ECF to help the premises and individuals affected by this infection. But nothing is absolute. If the COVID situation were to worsen, and if the sectors that they haven't quite recovered, they cannot recover in the near future, then we will consider further. Now, for the tourism sector, for instance, for the travel agencies, we are basically talking about 6.0 instead of 5.0, because last year, after the 4.0, we have ramped up the subsidy for them. For the premises that have been closed for more than 100 days, we have ramped up the subsidy after 4.0. Now, we didn't quite call that 5.0, but we have actually ramped up the subsidies for these premises that have been closed for a prolonged period of time. The SAR government will be monitoring the situation. Where necessary, we will be supporting and subsidizing these premises and individuals.
Next, the lady on the left. I'm from Oriental Daily. Right. Last year, the Lunar New Year fair was restored after cancellation in order to satisfy the need of the public. Now, this year you've decided to cancel it. Is it because you are of the view that the pandemic situation is more serious than last year, or you have totally ignored the aspirations of the farmers and also operators? Now, this is really the second year where people cannot have a joyous Happy New Year. Would you say that there is dereliction of duty on the part of the government? Can you, for instance, now later you are going to introduce the vaccine bubble, and then the premises can start operation. Now, why haven't you tightened the measures earlier? And Mrs. Lam, your term is close to an end. Can you tell us your inclination whether you want to seek a second term? As usual, I'm not going to comment on your second question, irrespective of where and on what occasion the question is put to me by the reporter. All right, Professor Chen can talk about our decision on canceling the Lunar New Year fair. Now we can see that there is a global outbreak of Omicron. Places that had the pandemic well under control, that had resumed traveling, well, they have tightened their measures once again. And in places in the U.S. or Europe, there have been demonstrations and riots because the people there are just fed up with the social distancing measures. In fact, viruses know no boundary unless we have a complete lockdown and close all our borders. In fact, we have almost the most stringent measures in preventing importation only Hong Kong residents are allowed to come back. We have already suspended flights from 8 countries, and many people complain that they're not able to come back. So it's not about whether the government has done well. We have already done our utmost in containing the pandemic, and we have seen some achievement in the past week. We're doing utmost to control the pandemic so that we can be free of these cases, and we can have quarantine-free travel. As regards how we can give hope to the industries in a matter of 3 weeks, because anti-epidemic measures or social distancing measures cannot be in place forever, I always say that it is difficult for me to strike a balance, the gives and takes. Now, because in the past week or so we have seen a higher vaccination rate, I said in the past that if we could have 20,000 jabs for people receiving the vaccine for the first time, then by the time we have our vaccination bubble on the 24th of February, the vaccination rate could be as high as 90%. Dr. Lam can confirm that with this high rate of vaccination, the place is relatively safer. So compared with previous waves, we are more confident. If we do not see deterioration in the current situation, if we do not have a major outbreak, we'd like to give some hope to these premises. We will do our utmost to allow them to operate to a certain extent, but then it will be on the basis of vaccination bubble. Dr. Sophia Chan, regarding cancellation of the Lunar New Year fair, the government has decided to cancel Lunar New Year fairs in 15 locations. It's been a difficult decision because traditionally we know that people like to go to a New Year fair, and then the flower farmers have labored for 1 year, and of course they want to sell their produce. But if we have the general picture in view, Dr. Lam and also the CE have told us that we are still in some danger. We still have a few transmission chains in society. We do our utmost to cut them, but contact tracing has not been easy. So our overall assessment is that there are still risks. And as we all know, New Year fairs are always crowded, and there will be a gathering of crowds. We would like to reduce mass gatherings and to cut the transmission chains and to prevent transmission. So protecting the life and health of the public is more important. So we have decided to cancel large-scale Lunar New Year fairs. The FEHD will refund in full the costs already paid to the store operators, and as said by the chief executive, the relevant store operators will be given an ex gratia payment of 50% of what they have paid. The FHD will try its very best to contact these store operators as soon as possible. The lady in front. I'm from cable TV. You said that hopefully you can contain the pandemic situation very soon, and then people can do business before the Lunar New Year. Now you're saying that you have to defer that to after the Lunar New Year. How confident are you? Even experts like Professor Yun Kwok Yung said that we can control the pandemic. So why don't you relax the measures earlier so that you can allow restaurants to operate until 10 p.m. so people can have year-end dinners? Now, Ao Ka Wang and Alex and Casper Choi are still under quarantine. Will you ask them to step down to show the holding the party for 225 persons. What is your progress of investigation for Wang Xia, who has concealed her various itinerary and lied? Are you going to take action against her? Now, assessment of the pandemic situation is a job for the Director of Health. Of course, many experts helping the government have their own views. Some say that the situation is quite well and is under control. Unless we have more local sources, the situation should be under control. But then another expert would come out at once to say that he disagrees and the situation is not that optimistic. All right, Dr. Lam, Director of Health, has just gave us an analysis. He is of the view that the pandemic is not yet under control and there is still a risk of major outbreak. And so we have to continue the social distancing measures. Our ultimate goal is to protect Hong Kong citizens. Sometimes we have to balance. If the pandemic situation is not too bad, we relax some of the social distancing measures to allow businesses to operate and people to have some activities. But for this round of the outbreak arising from Omicron, I've just gave you my assessment.
In the coming couple of weeks, we will be taking all the necessary measures like testing and contact tracing to make sure that before the social distancing measures come to an end on the 4th of February or the 4th day of the Lunar New Year, we would be more confident and we would instill hope into the community. As to the birthday gathering, there are 15 government officials that are involved, and they include the former Commissioner of Customs and Excise who are proceeding to retirement. So I've already made an announcement that we will follow up on this seriously. The internal probe hasn't quite completed, so it's not appropriate for me to respond to you in terms of individuals. But having said that, I will be approaching the issue with impartiality and deal with the individuals who have attended in the party, and I will be giving an account. Professor? Now, for the FHD's investigation into the restaurant, work is in hand. That there is a criminal investigation. If there are any breaches of the law, that they will face prosecution. We'll have to make sure that the investigation and the prosecution will be done in a fair and just manner. As for the restaurant, it is subject to Cap 559F, and that is of the PCDO, and this restaurant is a Group D or Category D premises. The responsible person, the staff members and the customers will have to abide by the legislation. Like, for instance, whether they have scanned the Leave Home Safe app, or whether they have kept the mask on and so on, and these are part of the requirements. If the patrons fail to observe Cap 559F and 559G group gathering and 599I regarding face mask wearing, and all these provisions will apply if in the investigation we find that there are breaches or non-compliance. Certainly there will be penalties. And under Cap 132, that's the Municipal Services Ordinance, they hold down a general license, a restaurant license, and we will be conducting the investigation along this line as well. As I said, if in the course of investigation some people have breached the legislation, and if they have made available the equipment, karaoke equipment and so on, then the FEHD will act in accordance with the law and take out prosecution action. Speaker not coming through. Will you yield the floor to other reporters? The lady in front in blue, please.
South China Morning Post. First of all, can we trust the government this time that the social distancing rules will be lifted by February 3? Because a lot of businesses are hoping on that to be resumed. What is the threshold for opening such premises, and can these businesses operate under a vaccine bubble even if there are still some local cases by then? And in today's banner that it says we want to resume travel as well, but it's really difficult for people to believe that given that there are 150 countries on high risk and 8 countries banned altogether at this point. So will this have any impact on Hong Kong's cargo flights and cargo logistics at this point? And what can you do to guarantee that these flight bans will be eased and flight will be resumed in a gradual manner to Hong Kong? A third question is on schools. You didn't mention schools today so far. So how long will schools have to shut? And what is the vaccine requirement for children aged under 12 by after Chinese New Year? Thank you.
All right, 3 questions altogether. The first general response is, I'm afraid nobody could give any guarantee. In a public health crisis like this, no one could guarantee whether we will have another dangerous variant after Omicron. So the health authorities and every government are trying their very, very best to fight the pandemic in order to protect their people. So Hong Kong has been fighting COVID-19 for exactly 2 years, and we have managed to protect our people. As I have just quoted, in terms of total number of confirmed cases, we were behind over 170 countries globally. In terms of confirmed cases per 1 million population and fatalities per 1 million population, we are only 4% of the global average, let alone compared with the USA or European countries. So we have been doing our very best, but no one could give a guarantee because this virus is changing and changing quite rapidly from one variant to another variant. Now, apart from that general response, I would say that in terms of social distancing measures, on this occasion, we have listened to what the trade has told us, that they want a little bit more certainty. Previously, we just rolled out the social distancing measures, 14 days, another 14 days, or even without an end date. So this has created a lot of anxiety and uncertainties for the trade. Now that we are in a situation better than the 4th wave because of vaccination, and I hope to see the vaccination rate to go up, say to over 80 or close to 90%, that will give us a better basis to now foretell that by then, after this expiry of the second 14 days, then we may be able to allow these premises to start operating again under a vaccine bubble. In other words, their staff and customers have to be vaccinated before they can go into the premises. But again, there's no guarantee because if the Omicron variant has given rise to a major outbreak in Hong Kong, then I don't think the Hong Kong population would support us to blindly lift the social distancing measures and putting our people at risk. So that is the situation. Now, about resuming travel, of course, we want to resume travel with the mainland and resume travel with the rest of the world. Since we have attained local zero, that is no local infection for a very long time, we have to be very vigilant in ensuring we are not importing cases. So when you look around the world, we have 2 million, 3 million cases every day. We should be worried about allowing more travelers coming from those places, and hence we are putting countries under Group A or enhanced Group A, which we will put on even more restrictions. That would certainly have a major impact on many aspects of Hong Kong. It's not just a cargo. The cargo is more affected by the latest imposition of stringent measures on the airlines. But without traveling or quarantine-free arrangement for overseas arrivals, that of course affect Hong Kong being an international city, an international financial center, a business hub, investors coming in, the organization of major events and concerts and art shows and so on. We know very well there are consequences. But we have to weigh these consequences against the health risk to the people of Hong Kong, because these viruses could kill people. If you look at the world, hundreds of people are still dying in every European country nowadays, and I have my utmost duty to protect the health of the Hong Kong people. Cargo flights will be affected by the latest measures because of the non-compliance by a couple of crew people. And so as a result of that, I already warned that there will be a shortage of cargo flights, which means that there will be a significant drop in cargoes and goods being brought in by air. And I noticed that many people are already commenting that that sort of situation will shortly emerge in Hong Kong. Now, about schools, we have only suspended face-to-face learning in all kindergartens and childcare centers, as well as primary school, from primary 1 to primary 6. We will try our very best, and by now I think we could confidently say that we will allow secondary schools to operate face-to-face learning until they have the Chinese New Year holiday. After the Chinese New Year holiday, of course, we would like to see schools resuming their face-to-face learning. But again, there could be no guarantee because much will depend on what will happen in the next 2 to 3 weeks in Hong Kong's COVID-19 situation. But applying to young children policy, I mentioned it earlier this week. So we will, after Chinese New Year, especially when school children go back to school, we will arrange school-based outreach and vaccination teams to apply vaccination to children from 5 to 11 in schools. But we will not go that far to make vaccination a prerequisite for going back to school because education is a right of the child. So we will honor the child's right to be educated at school, but we will do all our best to encourage and promote vaccination amongst young children for their own sake. Thank you.
今日最後一條問題。
Last question of the day. The gentleman on the right. I'm from Commercial Radio. So at the beginning, Mrs. Lam said that we were all ready for quarantine-free travel with the mainland. And when the pandemic is under control, then we can have a date. Is there any specific target, for instance, a number of days after which we had 0 infection, then we can ask for quarantine-free travel with the mainland authorities? Now, this year we're not going to have the Lunar New Year fairs as well. Last year, even before we had any vaccination, we allowed some New Year fairs. This year we have had some vaccination and closing down the Lunar New Year fair. Would you call that too draconian? And now experience tells us that last year people could go to the flower market because of the cancellation of the New Year fair. So will this measure be counterproductive? Now, you're going to operate a vaccine bubble, and customers or people involved are required to have the first or second jab. Would you think that such a kind of vaccine bubble is going to be effective? Because many people have got lower levels of antibodies. So will you review the arrangement of the vaccine bubble in due course? I think Dr. Lam and also Professor Chen can talk about the flower markets and also arrangement of the vaccine bubble, and I will talk about resuming travel. Thank you. CE. As I said, cancellation of the Lunar New Year fair is a difficult position. On the one hand, we know members of the public would like to visit Lunar New Year fairs, and the flower farmers would like to sell their produce, but then we want to protect the public, and the pandemic situation is such that we are still in some danger. There are still silent transmission chains. Should there be transmission in flower markets, even if we adopt a vaccine bubble for operation of the New Year fair, then there is no 100% sure that there will be no transmission. So balancing all factors, and given the current pandemic situation, we've decided to cancel the Lunar New Year fair. You mentioned the situation last year. Well, we have learned a lesson from last year. Of course, we will communicate with flower farmers as soon as possible. Last year, they used their own ways to sell their produce. And at Chinese New Year, apart from New Year flower markets, there are places that can be crowded as well. So please respond to the CE's appeal. Please avoid crowded places. So please take care of this. As for vaccination and also the booster, the Director of Health can tell you the discussion of the joint scientific committees. We appeal to the public, for those who have not even received their first dose, please be vaccinated as soon as possible. We have seen a very pleasing rising trend. Every day we are seeing about 10 to 20,000 of first doses being administered. I think this is a good sign, a good trend, because that can protect our public, and over 0.6 million have already taken the third jab. So for those who have yet to receive the first dose, and those who are ready for the booster, do come out to receive the jabs. Dr. Lam, the experts and also the Joint Scientific Committee have reviewed much literature and discussed what is meant by fully vaccinated. So for both vaccines, whether it be Sinovac or BioNTech, a full vaccination means having received both doses. Why are we promoting a booster? Because whether it be local or overseas research studies, 6 months after the 2 doses, the level of neutral antibodies does drop for both vaccines. So a booster is needed to raise the level of neutral antibodies. A rise in neutral antibodies can effectively make the symptoms milder, even if you have contracted the disease. But as for scientifically, it is proven that in terms of T cells and the death rate and the need for hospitalization, you fare better with the booster. And of course, when there are new variant and new mutant strain, we will discuss with the Joint Scientific Committee to see whether further action has to be taken. Why do I say that we will soon resume our border travel? Because what we have done will not be wasted. With the staunch support of the central authorities, we have done a lot of interface work. much time under the leadership of the CS4A, whether we're talking about our delegation going to Shenzhen and their experts coming to take a look in Hong Kong. But that was before Omicron appeared in Hong Kong. So in general, if we have got zero infection, zero local, zero unlinked cases for 14 days, then there is hope that we can resume quarantine-free travel with the mainland. And therefore, we have taken decisive and expeditious and targeted measures to stop the transmission of Omicron. We have already done a lot, but because we have yet to realize quarantine-free travel, I don't want to dwell into them in great details, but both sides have done a lot. So long as our pandemic situation is under control, then as always, the central authorities will support that we allow a normal flow of people between the two places. So let's stand together, let's unite and fight the virus together so we can create the favorable environment for quarantine-free travel. The press briefing ends here. Thank you.